Good afternoon, everyone. It is November 17th, 2020, and you are listening to the new WCEG Network. And we're located at WCEGTalkRadio.com. Once you get there through your browser, just click the live stream tab. Or you can watch us live on your smart TV, YouTube, and then write in WCEG Network. My name is Norman A. Carter Jr., and I'll be your host for the next hour, reminding you that we are the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community. You may like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and on Instagram. You can find us at WCEG_talk_radio and just at WCEG Network. Word of warning, the topics and opinions are those of the show host, moi, and my co-host, and our special guest, and not the WCEG Network, so do not call my boss. Thank you for your continued support. And at this moment, I'd like to welcome my co-host, Mrs. Damita Chatman, who is the chairperson of the Citizens for Excellence in Elected Officials, and also our very, very special guest, Reverend Dr. Robert Franklin, who is currently the candidate for the U.S. Congress for Georgia's 5th Congressional District. Welcome, Reverend Dr. Franklin.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you both today.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Dr. Franklin, I know that during this campaign, you've had an opportunity to talk incessantly about yourself. So please allow me to talk a little bit about you.
Please have at it.
Reverend Dr. Franklin received his Bachelor of Arts degree at Morehouse College in 1975, a Master's of Divinity degree at Harvard University, and his doctorate at the University of Chicago. Currently, he's in his position as the inaugural James T. and Berta R. Laney Chair in Moral Leadership at Candler. The Reverend Dr. Robert M. Franklin Jr. challenges students to explore the concept of moral leadership in the 21st century in different cultures and contexts in the United States and around the world. Now in his second term at Emory, Reverend Dr. Franklin is a former Presidential Distinguished Professor of Social Ethics and a senior fellow at the Center for the Study of Law and Religion, both at Emory, and was also the founding director of Candler's Black Church Studies program from 1989 to 1995. In addition to his role at Candler, which he began in 2014, he is a senior advisor to the Emory University president, as well as for community and diversity at Emory. He was director of the religion department at the Chautauqua Institution from 2014 to 2017, president of Morehouse College from 2007 to 2012, and president of the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta from 1997 to 2002. In addition, he was named to the Human Rights Campaign Project Council on expanding LGBTQ equality and inclusion efforts at historically Black colleges and universities. He is on the board of Demos and on the council of past HBCU presidents and a member of several professional organizations, including the American Academy of Religion and Society of Christian Ethics. And I said that all in one breath.
Very well done.
Welcome. Thank you, Doctor, and thank you for all your accomplishments.
Thank you, sir.
Mrs. Chatman and I have several questions for you, but would you like to begin with an opening statement about your platform?
Yes, thank you. I am a 30-year resident of the 5th Congressional District, and I am running because the people of the 5th District, the almost 790,000 residents of this extraordinary and richly asseted district deserve a voice and a vote in Congress during this period of national crisis bordering on national chaos. That's why I'm running to complete the final days of John Lewis's term. These are Congressman Lewis's days, and they extend until from now until Sunday, January 3rd, 2021. I believe we need someone in Washington at this critical moment to hold Donald Trump accountable. We need someone who can offer compelling arguments and compel other lawmakers to provide additional COVID stimulus checks, PPP monies, payment protection program, of the forgivable loan arrangement that allows employers to keep people employed. We've seen over 30 million people lose their jobs since COVID struck, and or have significantly lost hours and wages. COVID has had a disproportionate effect on African-American women and children and all people of color. In addition, I believe that I can leverage existing relationships that I've cultivated over many years. I was a keynote speaker at the National Prayer Breakfast for the Congressional Black Caucus years ago. It was covered by the Washington Post. And so the other members of Congress are accustomed to hearing my voice, accustomed to me providing moral vision and moral challenge. And with such a brief term, I think it's going to be important to have someone of moral and intellectual stature, of gravitas, someone who will be listened to when they appear. And so I'm making this appeal to all of the voters. As you may have be mentioning, the polls are open from now until November 25th, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving next week. So early voting is possible. But the final day and the election day itself is Tuesday, December 1st. And so I'm asking for your vote. Vote for Robert Franklin, one who is a demonstrated leader and a recognized expert in moral leadership. And moral leadership is leadership of integrity, courage, empathy, wisdom, and imagination aimed at serving the common good, not just our own private interests. And ultimately, moral leaders help us to become a better version of ourselves. America has drifted. America is lost. America is searching. And I believe this is a prime moment, even as racial reckoning is going on in the streets, to have someone who can bring wisdom about moral leadership. And I'll just close with this. I've been working on a series of messages, brief appeals, if you will, in the spirit of David Walker's appeal of 1828, to challenge Congress to think, to pause and think about certain things, because the conscience of the Congress has been away from us now and will have been away for 4 months. John Lewis's seat has been vacant. Congress is likely to get into all kinds of trouble without a conscience. And so I'd like to show up soon after this December 1st election, and on day one, speak truth to power and offer hope to a nation that is searching for vision and guidance. For that, I ask for your support, and I appreciate your willingness to tune in, to listen to this important conversation, and I look forward to responding.
Thank you so much, Dr. Franklin, for that wonderful introduction.
Yes, thank you.
I have a few questions, and Ms. Chatman has a few, and she's designated me to start off. And I have several meat and potatoes questions, but I'd like to begin with the elephant in the public room. And Dr. Franklin, 31,009 votes were cast in the September 29th runoff election in Georgia's 5th congressional for the US Congressional seat. You finished in second place with just 1,304 votes behind the first place finisher. This qualified you for the December 1, 2020 special election that we are in the process of taking care of now. If one searches your name on the internet, near the top of the search page is a public admonition directed towards you. This public letter from the first place finisher was a plea for unity, quotes, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. It requested that you withdraw from the December 1 runoff election. Do you view this letter as a public shaming tactic to derail your campaign and deny you your right to contest for the 12,305 votes that were cast for other candidates?
Well, Norm, thank you very much for raising that question. So far, no other media have raised this. I've had many people throughout the district raise a concern about having received a letter that initially was addressed to me from the other candidate, and I think was marked confidential. And then after a brief comment or response to the candidate, I indicated, number one, that I thought that solution was anti-democratic. Number two, contrary to the spirit of John Lewis, who wanted people to vote, wanted people to choose their leaders. And number three, I thought was troubling in its suggestion that the 7 candidates who were on the ballot on September 29th should have a private meeting and agree to remove our names from the ballot so that that candidate could be coronated. I thought that this was deeply troubling. I think it's a form of voter suppression, and this is suppression from within the village. I'm not surprised when there's suppression from outside our community of those who close polling places disproportionately in communities of color, of those who create more difficult and stringent voter ID registration laws, etc. But to have a member of our community and one contending for public service to create, engineer essentially a scheme that would eliminate the election, move the people out of the process, and ultimately not for any one of the 7 of us to be considered to move forward, but only for himself. So I do have trouble with the sort of moral horizon of that kind of action and scenario. And I hope, as again, pastors have written. One pastor, Joanna Adams, wrote a sharply worded letter and rebuke to that candidate, suggesting that his use of scripture was offensive to her and to many clergy, to many of the leaders in the city with whom she'd conferred. And perhaps, the candidate should answer for that.
Yeah, I wanted to give you an opportunity to answer that because I looked for an answer from you from that on the internet, and there was none. So I wanted you to give you an opportunity to publicly answer a question that I'm sure is of concern to many voters in the 5th Congressional District. Reverend Doctor, this country is in the midst of a global pandemic. 2 pharmaceutical companies have completed over 30,000 trials of a vaccine on humans of varied backgrounds. These vaccines will be available for an initial distribution by the end of the year. Whom in your constituency do you feel should be given first consideration of vaccinations preventing COVID-19?
Before I get to that, I'd like to just offer 2 prefatory comments. Number one, I think that this is an interesting question. That first of all, our community, every one of us viewing or listening should do all we can to prevent the virus, to flatten the curve, and to avoid becoming infected. I note that actually the other candidate in the race has talked quite a bit publicly about his own having contracted COVID and lived with COVID. Even our future Congresswoman-elect Nikema Williams has had and been infected by COVID. And I think Mayor Bottoms has talked about her family being impacted. So we all need to take this seriously. We don't know what the long-term physical and mental effects of this living with this virus will be. But that said, there are 4 or 5 practices that we should embrace immediately. You've all heard the 3 W's: wear your mask, wash your hands, watch your distance. 4th is cleaning surfaces in your households. We ought to make it a habit now of cleaning off, doorknobs that we never think about, and yet they can carry virus, or surfaces where we consume and prepare food. But 5th is ventilating our spaces. It becomes more challenging when the cold weather arrives, but we should keep air circulating so that we don't allow or facilitate the concentration of virus in our environments. That said, that's one practice I hope that can empower and help people. The second concern I would raise is that of what scientists and physicians, public health experts refer to as vaccine or vaccination hesitancy among people of color and among many rural and poor white community members. And so this is why there was real concern about whether or not these trials and testing trials would in fact include significant numbers of people of color. And I think they've worked hard to improve. I haven't seen the exact numbers, but they certainly wanted to exceed 20 to 30% to include people of color in those trials. And so we should look carefully at that. I do commend the deans of the historically Black medical schools, James Hildreth at Meharry, Valerie Montgomery Rice here at Morehouse School of Medicine, and other leaders that have been promoting African-American participation in these vaccination trials, so that we will know and have an early sense. And some, in the case of Dean Hildreth himself at Meharry, has said he himself is going to participate or is participating in a trial. We need to address those issues because Tuskegee is in the air.
Yes.
And people's suspicions are there. And I've been talking to some of the public health experts like Dr. Reuben Warren, Emory's Dean of Public Health, Jim Curran, about this precise concern. I think the final concern is that we look at, once the vaccines are available and they're ready to roll out, and if, I think I heard Dr. Fauci say recently, there are in the first round, 20 or 25 million vaccinations doses available, who's first? And so back to your important question. I've been rambling on, haven't I?
No, it's not a ramble. It's not a ramble.
Yes, I thought it important to lay that groundwork with respect to things we can do to protect ourselves and our families, and these phenomena of vaccination hesitancy in our communities. But then the question of whom first. And I say that we ought to ensure that our healthcare workers, that frontline workers, that essential workers, as we now call them, they've been around forever and working for lower wages, working without real career paths and upward mobility. But suddenly we decide we really need them. We now call them essential workers. And I appreciate so much senatorial candidate Raphael Warnock, who said, if they're really essential, let's pay them essential wages. So those would be my suggestions about and insistence. I would use my voice as a member of Congress during the month of December, December congressman, as an advocate for prioritizing these essential workers and the healthcare workers. And I just want to pay tribute to, my understanding is the first healthcare worker in the state of Georgia who succumbed to COVID was a physician down in Americus, Georgia. I won't call the name because I haven't confirmed it myself, but I saw it in the paper and I want to try to reach the family. But he was a physician who was treating patients, and this was before there was extensive mask wearing. He helped as one of his elder patients out to the car because he was disabled. And, there was no social distancing, there was no masking. And soon thereafter, that physician contracted COVID. And I think he lived for another 6 or 8 weeks, and then he died. And I just read that with a profound sense of heart sickness, because he was a good Samaritan, a good professional doing his work. And he was also the local leader of the NAACP in the Americus, Georgia region. So I want to reach that family before I sort of say his name publicly, to honor him and to thank them for their service. That gentleman, that physician, now departed, was our early and perhaps first hero and victim of COVID.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Mrs. Chatman, do you have some questions?
Yes. How you doing, Dr. Franklin? First of all, thank you for being a part of the show. The first question I have for you, if you get elected, will you vote on a higher stimulus package for the American people besides that $1,200?
Thank you, Ms. Chapman, because I think that your question is really the burning question of, for so many people who are no doubt listening and viewing, is what next? And there's a real crisis of leadership now in Washington. And it's such a confusing morass. That's why I suggested this is a time of national crisis bordering on national chaos, because the president seems to vacillate day by day, sometime hour by hour, on where he is. I mean, he sends the Secretary of the Treasury, Mnuchin, to go and negotiate with Speaker Pelosi. Then we find out they get close to a deal. Oh, but there's this guy by the name of Senator Mitch McConnell. He said, no way, I'm not a part of this. Then the White House weighs in. Look, you need to be a part of this. And then President Trump says to Pelosi and to Mnuchin, go big. I don't want a skinny package. He got that language because McConnell used this notion. We want a slimmed out, a skinny package, which was really going to do more for businesses and impose this rather interesting culture of liability protection for businesses, so that if their workers were sickened and the business took no measures to keep them safe, the businesses were it's like qualified immunity for police. It's kind of a get out of a jail free card. This is an insult to people, especially to those essential workers. And I'm thinking especially about our neighbors working in meat packing plants, for instance, who were succumbing by the scores and the hundreds. And Mitch McConnell decides COVID relief should protect the businesses where they work. So I think that needs to be called out. That's what a moral leader that's what John Lewis would do. He would speak truth to that kind of abuse of power. But to your question, Ms. Chapman, absolutely, that should be the priority. It should be generous. It should at least restore and go back to what was happening earlier this summer in terms of stimulus relief checks and the payment protection program checks to small businesses to keep people going. So I'm hoping that by the time I arrive in Congress, that measure will have passed, but still so far it's still wrangling, still negotiation. And once again, I believe in the power of messaging, and the power of the printed and spoken word. John Lewis believed in it. That's why he wrote his final testament, published in the New York Times on July 30, 2020. The day we buried John Lewis, when his final letter was published that day. And he said, though I am gone now, I want to say to you who remain, especially the young people, together, and this was the title of the piece, you may recall, together, you can redeem the soul of America. So that's echoing for me, that's what John Lewis left the world talking about, thinking about the soul of America. This COVID relief money ought to acknowledge America has a soul, and it ought to respond to those who are suffering.
That was powerful. I felt that through the computer. I heard on the television today that if they don't pass a package December 1st, all the student loans that went into a pile that you didn't have to pay, all the mortgages, now after that, they're gonna have to pay. So could you imagine people that don't have the money, now they got to pay all that back pay? Could you imagine that? That's why was asking that question. Another question I want to ask you is, what do you think about around, I say, District 5, the county line, going down Cascade, Fairburn? What do you see that looking like under your, could you get something done in 30 days, even just start something? Because in that area, if you know over there by Fairburn, it's kind of run down.
Yeah.
And so what can you do? What can you get started in 30 days?
It's a wonderful question. And, other candidates have talked about what they've been able to accomplish legislatively in a short term, in a 40-day term in the state legislature, for instance, or et cetera. The reality, however, is there's not going to be a lot of new legislation happening in December. People already will be thinking about the holiday recess. There will be some focus on appropriations and ensuring that the government remains funded. So back in September, the Appropriations Committee in the House, led by New York Democrat Nita Lowey, introduced a continuing resolution, or they call it on Capitol Hill, a CR, to ensure that the government could operate from September through December 11th. So December 11th will be another checkpoint day where something needs to happen. And I would like to be there during that period to insist that that the CR pass, but that District 5 is a part of what happens then. Even to offer a kind of a plea on behalf of John Lewis for economic relief and some special attention to the needs of those who are struggling in this district, in this seat that has been vacant for 4 months. I believe that although, Georgia has been in good hands, because thanks to other Congress members, Hank Johnson and Lucy McBath, and David Scott, and of course, Sanford Bishop in Columbus. Georgia, I've checked in with John Lewis's staff and other members of Congress. So we haven't lost anything, but there is an opportunity to advance certain priorities. So that's number one, to become a voice, an advocate, leveraging my existing relationships, with other leaders who are there, from Maxine Waters and those members I just mentioned, to Cedric Richmond, who has already endorsed Robert Franklin for this congressional race. And of course, he looks like it may be headed to the White House as Director of Public Liaison and Engagement. But the other thing I've done, and I'll just end this here, I'm a former program officer at the Ford Foundation. I have already been in touch with some former and current senior leaders and presidents of philanthropic institutions. And the reason I think they're so important is they don't have the bureaucratic slowdown and snail-paced process of a Congress where there's lots of negotiation. They have rapid response money. And I know what it meant to have a budget that you could do rapid response things with. We used it during the church burnings back in the 1990s, rapid response fund. So I've already contacted and just signaled to some of them, we need to be prepared to honor John Lewis with a special gift, a special blessing for the 5th District. And you can believe that Cascade, Fairburn, those corridors, and the historic West Side District, other parts of our communities, and Bankhead and Grant Park that need attention would get that attention. I think
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, she's still muted. I have my "you are muted" sign on.
Okay.
There we
Let
go.
me ask you a last question. I know that one of the candidates said they had a relationship with Senator Lewis, Congressman Lewis, I'm sorry, and you had one. And I know you can say a lot of things when folks ain't here to speak up. If Congressman was right here today. What do you think he would say about Dr. Franklin?
Wow, that's a wonderful question to speculate on, Chapman. I think he would say Dr. Franklin has been a faithful and effective leader and visionary. He led two anchor institutions in my district, the Interdenominational Theological Center, developing great pastors, faith leaders, missionaries, Bible teachers, church leaders for the future. And he led Morehouse College, the college that produced the man who changed my life, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so any man who is entrusted and undergoes a national search, and the search committee identified him as the person they wanted, I trust him with the keys to my office. Go forth, young man, serve and be faithful and be humble. It's not about you, it's about the people.
Wow. When I say that was powerful, that was powerful. That's how I'm gonna turn it back over to
You asked me a question.
I asked the question, and I'm gonna tell you. When you can feel something, I'm gonna leave it right there.
Amen. Amen.
I'm gonna leave it right there.
Thank you.
Well,
Excuse me, Mr. Carter.
Yeah,
I got an emergency call that I need to take. I'm gonna
okay,
off the screen, and I'll be right back.
I got you covered. Reverend Dr. Franklin,
Yes, sir.
several times during our conversation here, you have indicated that you thought that you were rambling or talking over. I'd like to, for the sake of our listeners, to say you're not rambling. In fact, you saved me from asking 3 or 4 questions in your last answer to Ms. Chatman, which I think is great, because the one thing that we suffer from in this country is our political leaders giving truncated answers to questions,
Yes.
or cloudy answers to questions, and you've been very clear. Just have a couple of more questions. Number one, in the fiscal year 2021 U.S. budget, the President of the United States stated, "My administration continues to support the growth of the energy sector by removing unnecessary regulations and unleashing America's vast natural and human resources. To that end, even this week, the President is working hard to sell government-protected, environmentally essential areas to oil barons. This not only affects the quality of life in such places as Alaska, but also the air and water quality in the 5th Congressional District. Will you vote to strengthen the Environmental Protective Agency should this come up for vote during your tenure?"
Yeah, this is a terrific question, and so important, because there's been a lot of talk about climate change. And we also need to frame this in terms of climate justice and environmental racism that has visited many communities of color, locating toxic factories and businesses nearer communities that are low income and occupied by people of color. We have in the past and continue to face disproportionately greater risks from elevated pollutants and toxins in our environments. We immediately think of what happened in Flint, Michigan, the children simply thirsty and coming in from school, coming into play and getting a glass of water with brown elements in the water. It's just an offense to God's people and to the environment, which is God's creation. And so I am proposing stronger controls, stronger regulations that are reasonable, that allow intelligent and careful and respectful economic development, but do not pollute and harm human beings. And in the past, we have not been as careful about that as we need to be. And so I'm anxious to become a voice for more thoughtful respect of climate science. The thing that I'm thinking most about when I hear this topic is the fact that I have been blessed to travel to all 7 continents. And it was in Antarctica that I, of course, where there are no human beings, there are only penguins and walruses and other animals. There's some researchers who are there for certain months of the year, but Antarctica is a continent larger than the land mass of the United States of America. And yet it is the coldest, darkest, windiest, driest place on earth. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I encourage others who can travel there, put that on your bucket list, Brother Norm and Sister Chatman. Go visit Antarctica. I told my wife I wanted to do this before a certain special birthday. So she said, I'm not going. I don't need to go to Antarctica because, in order to get there, you essentially aboard a ship and you are running into ice all day and all night, pushing ice out of the way. So they move slowly. Anyhow, I think that it was an indication while in Antarctica, and I saw pictures. There were a group of Ukrainian scientists who have a lab there, and they showed me each year they take a photograph of the ice scape. And what you saw over the past dozen years is steady erosion. We've all seen this probably on television, but to be there and see it for myself was chilling. The pun intended, chilling in Antarctica. So we do need to take climate science seriously. My campaign takes science seriously. I understand some other candidates have actually said publicly that they have questions about climate change and climate science. The other issue that I would conclude with here is the so-called GND. You didn't mention it, but it may have been implicit in your question, the Green New Deal.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that's become so highly politicized, you can barely have a conversation about climate and protecting the environment and ensuring that we can have clean air, clean water, reliably trustworthy food sources, etc., rather than these the calamities that we're seeing happening everywhere all the time. And but the fundamental vision in the United Kingdom and in Europe, where the Green New Deal was originally crafted, was that there should be a connection between creation of new jobs and respecting climate control, climate science. And it's that connection that I think we've lost in all the politicizing. And so I'm hoping that, and I would be a voice in Congress for greater dialogue, negotiation, perhaps compromise around the issues of, as we go forward, let's create more jobs. We got to lift 30 million people who lost their jobs and lost their wages or had significantly reduced wages since this COVID has struck us. 30 million. How do we provide, and that's not to mention even the 140 million low income and poor people who are already devastated and struggling with multiple pandemics when COVID arrived. We need not just new legislation, new measures, and I think that those are going to come from the Biden-Harris administration, connecting new jobs to better climate practices and stewardship of the earth. But also, I think there's a need, and this is back to moral leadership. Speaking to repair the soul of America, we need to learn to feel the pain of others. And those who have been blessed, those who have more, can give and share more. The billionaires that benefited from President Trump's 2017 tax cut need to chip in more. And if we move in that direction, as I believe our new president and vice president will lead us, they will have advocates like Dr. Franklin, and I hope Congressman Franklin, and I know that Congresswoman-elect Nikema Williams will be on point to carry those messages forward as of January 4th. So thank you for that very important question.
Thank you for your answer, sir. And I'd just like to add one little or a couple of little things that one of the reasons I brought this question up, particularly about air and water quality, is and I don't mean to be to editorialize here, but there's a lot of conversations about reparations and things like that, which to me right now is pie in the sky. But with this air and water quality, we are going to pay a price for years and years to come for those children who were poisoned with lead poisoned water, because it's been proven by science that excessive exposure to lead in our water and in our paint creates mental and physical disabilities that can be lifelong. And we really need not to, that situation is not over, and it will not be over for many, many years to come. So thank you for your answer. And I have one other question to ask you, sir. First of all, we at WCEG thank you for being with us and your answers, which which brought about a lot of clarity and vision and thought. But after your congressional tenure ends, do your personal goals include competing for another elective office?
Boy, another perceptive, probing question. What I'll say at this time, Norm and Ms. Chatman, is that I feel called to public service in a new way. So I've already been involved in public service, because when you lead an institution, when you raise money, you work with a board, you work with a faculty, a staff, you hire hundreds of community members. You become a part of the families of your employees as you look out for them, as you work to develop the community around you, the historic West Side community, in my case of the two institutions I was served as president of. You come to appreciate the importance of public service, and not, people never charged me with trying to be on an ego trip as a president. If anything, I would say to the students at Morehouse, they would see me leave my office, walk across campus every Wednesday for Fried Chicken Wednesday, by the way. I would walk across campus to have the fried chicken to eat with the students. But you know what I would do on the way over? I would pick up trash on my campus. I was paying the staff and they did a great job, but sometimes they would miss something or something would blow on the campus. I was picking up trash. The young men would look at me, Dr. Frank, why are you picking up trash? You got on a nice suit. And I said, brothers, I want you to see what leadership entails. And it's part of what Martin King and what John Lewis and Rosa Parks taught us, that you need to serve your way to the top, serve your way up. And sometimes the young men would see me come and they would start picking up the trash before I got there, so I wouldn't have to pick it up. It was beautiful on a couple of occasions to see 2 or 3 of them scrambling, and they would smile at me and I walk by and nod my head. That's leadership. So I feel on Friday, July 17th, when C.T. Vivian passed from time to eternity that morning, and that evening, John Lewis, same day, Friday, July 17th, I felt something kind of got its hooks into me. I feel like, the Spirit was calling and said, it's your turn to serve, and serve in some new ways. I'm blessed to be president of 2 great institutions. I didn't need anything else to make me feel like I've had an impact. I'm deeply honored that God allowed me to serve and people supported me, but it felt like maybe I could do even more. And so that's why I'm running now. If I am blessed to win, or if I do not win, I want to lose with integrity. And if I do, I will continue to serve, continue to be a community leader. I hope a community educator, bringing knowledge that helps people live better lives. I've written 4 books, and this is my latest, moral leadership. So this is the crusade and campaign I want to lead, is getting today's leaders, including members of the city council, reading moral leadership.
I'm gonna have to get that book.
under the Georgia Dome, reading moral leadership. And maybe we'd all be better off if we could be the kinds of leaders.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question. I'm sorry I had to step off for an emergency call. And I've asked several candidates this and never got a right answer. So I'm going to ask you, what goes along with this? Is it a pay? Is it benefits? What is it? These 30 days? Will you get paid? Will you get what would you get?
You know, that's a very good question. I actually have not asked that question. I'm certainly not expecting much. What I would suspect, because if you're formally sworn in, you become a kind of employee and a part of the congressional docket as one who is accountable. You put in your hours. And so, you know, the pay $174,000 a year for a member of Congress. That increases with, you know, if you have seniority in many years. So, but for newcomers, $174,000. My suspicion is that it would be 1/12, 1 month of that, a slice of that could become available. And so I hope that answers your question.
So you wouldn't get, because I heard if you serve 5 days in Congress, you'll get a lifetime benefit. Is that true or not?
That's not true.
Okay.
My understanding is, in fact, I think it's 5 years, I think it is,
Okay.
that entitles one to a certain percentage of a pension that can increase over time, as I understand it.
Okay. So what you saying, you've been the president of Morehouse, you're a professor at Emory. So what I can say is you ain't trying to dress up no resume now. You're just I'm asking, so you are truly a servant and
Yes.
want to do what God has led you to do.
Yeah, with all humility, that's really what I believe. I mean, I didn't need to do this. I wish you could have heard my conversations the weekend John Lewis died, and we learned that the Democratic Party of Georgia had one business day to determine whose name would appear on the ballot instead of John Lewis's for the November 3rd election that just happened last week. And it was an interesting process because 130 people stepped forth and applied.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm a post seat holder, so I know it was 130 people
Yes, sir.
applied.
Yes.
Yep.
And then there was a selection or nominating committee, including Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, Stacey Abrams, Jason Carter, the grandson of President Carter, and a couple other people. They identified 5 names to advance to give presentations to the entire 40-member, I think, executive committee of the Georgia Democratic Party. And Nikema Williams was one. Robert Franklin was the second. Park Cannon, Andre Dickens of the City Council, and James Woolard of the NAACP.
I was on that call. Yes.
And I was honored to be there. No other of the candidates who ran in September were on that list. I'm thrilled that Congresswoman-elect Nikema Williams will be the next Congresswoman. The next Congress, the 117th Congress, will have the largest number of women present in its history. Georgia's a part of that. I'm thrilled, and I consider myself her kind of a big brother figure. I want to be a support and a blessing to her in any way that I can. But, and I've said I have no intention of running against her in a future election, but I'm open and I keep an open mind to other possibilities to serve. And that's why I didn't complete my answer to you, Brother Carter, that if another opportunity emerges and I discern that it's right for me, you may hear again from Robert Franklin on the ballot seeking your confidence and vote.
Have elect Senator Nikema reached out to you?
We have spoken. We have spoken to Congresswoman-elect, yes. And
we were with one of the candidates and they were saying who had endorsed them, the other candidates. So have any of those candidates that ran with you, against you, or with you, come out and endorse you?
I spoke to all of the other candidates, with, of course, the exception of Mr. Hall about this. And no, that we had good, cordial conversations. They decided they were not prepared to make a public endorsement. And so short answer to that is no, though I covet the opportunity for their voters. And as Brother Carr said earlier, the 12,000 people who didn't vote for Mr. Hall or Dr. Franklin, I'm hoping they'll consider my candidacy and what I represent, and that I do not support voter suppression within our community, eliminating elections. Let's do this the right way. Let's trust the people. Let them choose, even if it's a briefer term. Fortunately, we haven't lost in this process. And Georgia has been in good hands, as a member of Congress told me, one of the Georgia delegates. Georgia has been in good hands. So just go on and do what you need to do.
Yeah, God, and I appreciate you. I thank you for taking your time out. I look forward to seeing what you're gonna bring to the table in this election. You got December the 5th, so is it December 5th?
First, December 1st. Number one.
Okay.
Number one.
Okay.
Tuesday, December 1st.
They keep changing. So
There's a lot of changes.
we got a few minutes. Let me ask you, how do you feel about the Lindsey Graham getting into Georgia politics? How do you feel about that?
It's bad trouble. Bad trouble. Not good trouble. He is, with all due respect to Mr. Graham, something of a political misfit. I think he once had a conscience and once had self-respect to hold Donald Trump accountable and to speak the truth about it. He has now, I think, been, something in him has been lured out, has been drained out. And now he is something of a crony for a president who is a racist, who is mean-spirited, who does not have the spirit of service and Christian, Jewish, Muslim love and respect for others. So Mr. Graham needs to stay across the border. Don't come back to Georgia. Stay out of our business, because it's just a matter of time when Jamie Harrison or somebody is going to give you a run for your money. Your money, you want to give $1 million to the Georgia. Keep your money. Stay across the border. Let us handle our business.
See, you look, when you said that, I had a flash, and I got to say it. What do you think about our former representative, Vernon Jones? The way he has conducted himself, and I'm going to say it, you ain't got to say it. I think he just sold DeKalb County out. And so the Bible says, what's in a man gonna come out of a man. And I believe that's been laying dormant in him a long time. That's just me.
Wow, that's a powerful diagnosis. I'm just gonna stand by you, Sir Chapman. Amen. What she said. What she said.
Thank you. You got it, Mr. Carter. You got it.
Well, Reverend Dr. Franklin, I have run out of questions. As I said before, your answers have been thorough and clear, and they have even inspired new thought. And personally, I just hope that however this election goes, that it becomes a fulcrum to greater things in your career. And we know that that you are being led by the Spirit, and that means an awful lot. At this time, would you like to make a closing statement?
I will simply say that I have such admiration for both of you and your leadership. And I want to remind people of what the First Amendment of the US Constitution says. It says people should have freedom of religion. The government should not interfere. People should be able to peacefully assemble is in the First Amendment. So don't talk down against those who are gathered to protest injustice and bad behavior. But it also, in the First Amendment, says the freedom of the press should not be abridged or constrained in any way. And you two, as extraordinary visionary journalists and educators of the public, represent the best of what our First Amendment provides and protects, and I commend you. I do seek the support and the votes of all those who are viewing and listening. There are two compelling candidates in this race, and I have respect for my colleague opponents' track record of service in the past. But I really believe that I have been called for this moment and can bring to this moment, as a former president of Morehouse, as a minister, an educator, as one who has advised 3 US presidents, Clinton, Bush, and Obama, and as one who is known by members of Congress today, that on day one, I can bring the moral and intellectual gravitas, stature, substance that those other members of Congress will want to pause and say, hey, the 5th District sent the former president of Morehouse here, hear ye him. I think if they send other candidates with other credentials, they're likely to say, well, okay, welcome and welcome aboard, and you'll be here a short period. And they may or may not even learn other people's names, but they know who I am. And I've spoken to them and I've challenged them. And they have said, we want more of that kind of moral leadership. So I do make that appeal. You all are going to want to hear my appeals. And the first one is titled, John Lewis is Watching. So stand by and vote for Robert Franklin on December 1st.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mrs. Chatman, for being once again my illustrious co-host. To my listeners, this is the second in a series of programs we've had concerning the 5th Congressional U.S. District. The choices have been put before you, and hopefully we have put both candidates in their best light. And as I had mentioned a few weeks ago on another program, that we really need to stop looking at the superficial and look beneath the surface, look at the qualities, look at the character, look at the record of service, look for their ability to take care of your specific needs, look for sincerity. These are the things that you can look at if you give yourself a moment to look beyond just the superficial things that you really like to hear. Sometimes you have to consider the things that are uncomfortable for you to hear. But this is how we make great choices and become informed voters. And you have an opportunity to do that between now and November 25th. For those of you in the 5th Congressional District, please take advantage of that. Avoid the rush. If you don't get in, vote before December 25th, December 1st, get it done. Please get it done, because as you can see in these elections, votes matter. And even though the candidates that we have interviewed, their service is only for a few weeks, that few weeks can make a huge, huge difference in your future. So please vote. And we thank you again, Reverend Dr. Franklin, for being available to us and informing the public that really needs this information. And we thank all you listeners who tuned into WCEG today, because we continue to speak life into the community, and our goal is to help you. And as I always like to close in saying, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. We thank you all and have a good evening.